Alrighty guys, welcome back to Star Wars Review. Today I'm reviewing The Mandalorian Season 3, Chapter 19, The Convert, which was written by Jon Favreau and Noah Clore, and was directed by Lee Isaac Chung, and was released on March 15th, 2023, which I thought is just an alright episode. It is the longest episode of the series so far, and is also one of the more slower ones, and it does shift the focus away from Din and over to Dr. Pershing, and kind of we see what he's up to. All of his stuff takes place on a Coruscant. It did kind of have a feel of an episode like Andor, but I would say if it was an episode of Andor, it'd probably be the worst episode of Andor. Obviously I loved Andor to death. I thought all 12 episodes of Andor were really, really good. So, I'm not saying this episode was terrible. I still didn't really love this episode that much. There was still a lot of stuff I did enjoy. Definitely the opening scenes of the episode with Din, Bo, and Grogu picks up right where the last episode ended off, with Bo kind of just sitting there waiting for Din to kind of get up, which he finally does. Grogu was kind of by his side, which I thought was cute, but Bo asks Din if he saw anything alive down there, which Din is like, what? Which Bo's like, nothing, which Bo obviously wants to keep the mythosaur a secret right now because he probably thinks he can use it to then lead Mandalore later. But Din kind of collects a little bit of the water into a little capsule and takes it and whatnot, which they then leave Mandalore and start to head back to Kavala, where they get attacked by some TIE interceptors, which is the first time we've seen them in a live action story since Return of the Jedi. So it's cool to see them again in live action. But I was really into the action scenes here. I thought it was a lot of fun. One thing I quite enjoyed was seeing Din drop out of Bo's ship and then head down to the N1 where he gets in it. And him and Bo take out all the TIE interceptors. I just thought it was a lot of fun. One thing with this episode, most of the time with stuff, I like the action scenes, but I'm usually way more into slower, more character moments, which I felt the exact opposite with this episode. So I do find it weird, but maybe it was just I've been missing fast-paced, dog fighting, Star Wars spaceships and whatnot, because there really hasn't been a lot of that in recently, in live action Star Wars. And this was that type of scene. It was well done and a lot of fun. So that might be some reason, but it still was great. I really enjoyed it. And I am excited to see more dogfighting scenes with the N1 starfighter in this season. But they then start to head back to Bo's palace, but some TIE bombers come and destroy it, which Bo is obviously very upset about it. So she goes after the bombers, but a crap ton of interceptors come. So Din convinces Bo to kind of stand down and flee, which she does, and so they head to someplace safe, Din knows. But it then cuts over to Coruscant and Dr. Pershing for pretty much the rest of the episode. At the start, we see that comms officer from Season 2, who worked with Gideon, which is not revealed till much later in the episode, but we do learn her name, which is Elia Kane. I just say that so I can refer to her as her name, so I don't have to refer to her as a comms officer. But you see her go to the opera house on Coruscant to watch a speech from Dr. Pershing, where he's talking about cloning and how he did it for the Empire, but now thanks to the MSD program, he hopes to help the New Republic with cloning, which he thinks will be able to help people who are sick, which he mentions his mother, who had died. But if they had access to this cloning tech, she could have possibly survived, which I was definitely intrigued by all this, because we've known that there's something going on with cloning and whatnot, with Gideon and Dr. Pershing, but it's nice to kind of get more into that. It kind of, I guess, confirms some of what Gideon was trying to do, which was clone Grogu to probably make himself Force sensitive. But after the speech, we see Pershing trying to leave, but gets stopped by a bunch of rich people who tell him that it's so great that he's now doing this work for the New Republic, even though it doesn't even seem like they really, cared that much about the Empire. And, they were probably rich during the Empire anyways. So, In fact, the one does say that none of it really matters to him. But we then see Pershing head back to the MSC housing, which kind of gets shots of him riding home in the little taxi, which the taxi droid's kind of telling him all about Coruscant, and he doesn't really care, he just wants to go home. But it was nice to kind of see this side of Coruscant in live action again. But he arrives at the housing and kind of gets stopped by some other MSC officers, which asked Pershing to have a drink with them, which he agrees, and they all introduce themselves, which I guess they've all just been given numbers and whatnot to go by, which kind of throughout the episode kind of see the New Republic maybe doing stuff what the Empire kind of do, like giving these people numbers instead of just allowing them to go by their names, which I'll get into that more later. But they all introduce themselves, and one of them turns out to be Elia Kane, which surprises Pershing. He reveals to the others that Pershing reveals to the others that Kane had worked for Gideon, which are kind of surprised by that. But they also talk about rumors that Gideon escaped his war tribunal, which I do wonder if that is the truth or not. I assume we'll get back to Gideon later this season. But we see them reminisce about their time with the Empire, which they ask Pershing, what he looks back on, which he's like, oh, I don't. But they're like, oh, not like that. More the simple things, which Pershing mentions these little ration biscuits he liked, which later he's in his room getting ready for bed, listening to a Wikipedia article on Coruscant, which I found funny. But he hears a knock at his door, which he opens and finds no one, but finds a container full of those biscuits. But the next day we see him doing his job now, which is just like a normal desk job, archiving a bunch of Imperial info, which he just keeps getting more and more work piled on him. But later we see him go to Monument Plaza with Kane, which is nice to see it in live action. We saw it a few times in the Clone Wars, but it's the location of the highest mountain on Coruscant, Umate, which I guess is really the only mountain left, I guess, because now it's this big city. But we see Kane starting to plant ideas into Pershing's head about continuing his research, which, Pershing kind of listens to and kind of agrees that he does want to continue it. But afterwards, she also kind of gets him to start breaking some rules, as he, wonders what Umate is and asks about it, and asks if he can touch it, which, she says, you can bend some rules every once in a while. So he does, and he kind of gets in trouble for it. Just kind of gets yelled at by a security droid. But the next day, we see him talking to this droid, who I guess is like for the people in the MSC program to talk to. I guess it's like a corrections officer. But the droid gives a bunch of questions about the New Republic and Pershing's job and whatnot, which Pershing just kind of gives basic answers to, yes or no. But he then says, or asks if he can continue his research recreationally, which the droid says that, it would be prohibited because it was cloning, which Pershing accepts and leaves. But he then goes back to the housing and talks to Kane about the idea of continuing his research, which she tells him that they can get him the supplies, but they'll have to leave their designated area, which Pershing doesn't want to do that, which, Kane tries to get him to, but eventually tells him to kind of sleep on it, which the next day we see him continue his desk job, where he finds that some of the info he's archiving is going to be destroyed, which he asks the one officer dude who's giving him stuff, that the stuff that's going to be destroyed is still usable, and that he can show, the New Republic that, which the officer says that he would have to submit a request, and he doesn't even know if someone from the MSC program can even do that. So Pershing says to, forget about it. But later we see him talking to that droid again, which kind of hesitates on some of the answers. But he then asks the droid that their main objective is to help the New Republic, which the droid said yes. And so he also asks if that supersedes everything else, which the droid also says yes. Which the answer, I guess, kind of allows Pershing in his head to kind of go through with Kane's plan, which he heads back to the housing and tells Kane that he's up for it. which Kane says that they can go the next day, which we see Pershing kind of changing his outfit and whatnot, and looking in the mirror, telling himself that he's helping, and that it's the right thing to do, which we hear some very ominous Empire-like music. But they then head out and board this train, which Pershing is still a little uneasy about it, but Kane tells him that they're just going to this Imperial Star Destroyer, and they'll find the stuff he needs and take it, which she reveals that's how she got those biscuits for him, and she reveals that she was the one who got them for him, which kind of eases up the uneasiness for Pershing. But they then need to get off the train because there's like a droid looking for passengers' tickets, which they don't have one. So they kind of get to the back of the train and jump off, and then head to that Star Destroyer, which inside, Kane finally introduces herself fully to Pershing, giving her giving him her name, which we also learn that Pershing's first name is Penn, Dr. Penn Pershing. But they find a lab, get the stuff Pershing needs, but some New Republic officers come, so they try to escape, but they get caught, where Kane reveals that she set Pershing up, and she takes the equipment and goes away, and then the officers arrest Pershing, which later we see him hooked up to a mind flare, which he's very distraught by it, but this New Republic officer tells him that it's not a mind flare, but a similar device, which they're using to kind of smooth traumatic memories and whatnot, which Pershing is also trying to tell them that Kane set him up, but they don't listen, which we do see Kane is watching in the other room, but they fully hook him up and turn it on at a low voltage, which I guess is Officer Zed that supposed to give them a smooth kind of feeling, I guess. But all of them leave except for Kane, who watches, and she turns up the mind flare all the way up, which, at the start we see Pershing, it seems like it might be smoothing him, I don't know, but when Kane does that, it shows him he's very much, distraught now. But the last moment we see Kane pull out one of those biscuits and start eating it kind of menacingly, which I do wonder what side she's truly on and why she set him up. I'm guessing she might still be working for Gideon. I'm not sure, we'll just have to wait and see. But the end of the episode shows Din, Bo, and Grogu heading back to Din's Mandalorian covert, where he reveals he bathed in the living armor waters, which the armorer inspects the water which Din collected, and is like, yes, this is the living waters, Din, you are redeemed. Which the armorer asks Bo if she did also, which Bo reveals that she has, which the armorer asks if she's removed her helmet, which she says she hasn't, so the armorer says she is redeemed also, which Bo kind of plays along with it, and we see the others welcome back Din into the cult, and also welcome Bo into the cult. But the episode ends with Bo kind of looking at the symbol of the mythosaur on the wall. So yeah, like I said, I thought the episode was alright. I don't know, I just wasn't as into it. I liked seeing the New Republic and some of its struggles to govern. With Star Wars, Stars is usually pretty black and white, good versus evil. But this episode kind of shows in some ways that the New Republic is similar to the Empire. To me, everything with the New Republic kind of struggling to govern makes sense because eventually they do fail for at least a moment. So, not really a good government, at least in how it's ran. I will say it is kind of weird, I feel, comparing the Empire to the New Republic in the way that it's done. And it's because the Empire are, a fascist government, where the New Republic is a democratic one. Obviously, not saying democratic governments are always good and can't be bad, but I don't know. It just felt weird to me. For whatever reason, I just didn't really like that too much. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking a little too much into it. But I do like showing the New Republic, kind of in its struggles to govern. I like that. Maybe wish it was just done a little differently and not kind of showing it in a very, very similar way to how the Empire might do stuff. So yeah, but I did really like everything with Din and Bo. I love that opening moment. I also, I wouldn't say I'm a big fan of Din rejoining the cult. I didn't want him to, but I do like the idea of how Bo is joining the cult, kind of just playing along with it and kind of doing it so she can figure out some way to tame the mythosaur, I guess, and reclaim Mandalore. So I'm very, very into that. I do really like that. Don't really like Din rejoining, but it is what it is. I'll just have to wait and see where everything goes with that. So, yeah, but my grade, I'm going to give it a B. I really loved everything with Din and Bo. If it was just that, this episode I thought would have been, great, expanding upon what we saw. But I just wasn't as big of a fan of the stuff with Pershing and whatnot. I didn't hate it, but there's some stuff I mentioned I just wasn't crazy about. So, yeah, but that's going to be it for this one. Next week, I'll be reviewing Chapter 20, so you're checking that out then. But in the meantime, check out my reviews on Chapter 17 and 18 and all my other Mandalorian stuff and everything else to do. But I've been Starzuno. Catch you guys in the next one.
Where were you then? Did you think your dad was the only Mandalorian?